Hi everyone and welcome back. It always amazes me how creative humans can get when it comes to inflicting pain on other humans. The medieval devices we're going to cover in this episode were made for these cruel purposes: to torture, torment, and kill. And in some instances, to entertain the crowd as well as the torturer. So let's dive in and go explore some of the worst medieval torture devices ever created. Number 10. Dunking and cucking. This form of torture was mainly associated with alleged witches. They would dunk the accused to obtain a confession. The victim would have been tied to a plank of wood, a chair that hung from a beam or a bow. Then the torturer would dunk the accused under the water, and the victim would be pulled out of the water only before the point of drowning. Cucking, which is another form of dunking, was carried out in public places as a form of public humiliation. Replicas of ducking stools can still be seen on display in the towns and villages across the UK in places such as Dorset. Number 9. The tongue tearer. What is the worst way you could think of to silence an individual without them dying, while still sending a message to others? Did you think of something like this? The tongue tearer was used to silence people who had committed blasphemy or heresy by cutting the victim's tongue out. To use this device, the torturer would force your mouth open with a mouth opener. Then the device would be clamped down onto your tongue, and the grippers would lock in place. Once a firm hold was achieved, a screw at the back of the device was firmly tightened, and then the torturer would pull the victim's tongue out of their mouth and would roughly cut it off, silencing the victim for good. We place this device as number 9 because, whilst the pain of having your tongue torn out would be excruciating, it is unlikely that you would die. Number 8. The pear of anguish. The pear of anguish, also known as the pear of the Pope, and the choke pear, was used to both humiliate and torment those who had lied or committed non-heterosexual acts. For people who committed such acts, the torturer would insert the pear of anguish into the man's posterior, or the woman's genitalia. Then the torturer would turn a screw, which was located at the back, so that it would expand the pear of anguish to such an extent that it would have ripped open your orifices. For those who may have been brave or stupid enough to have lied or committed blasphemy, the pear could also be used. In this instance, the torturer would force open your mouth and push the pear of anguish into your mouth. Then the torturer would turn the screw to expand the pear until your jaw was dislocated and your cheeks ripped open. However, some academics dispute the documented accounts of the use of the pear of anguish as highly questionable. Either way, we place the pear of anguish at number 9 because, as painful as it would be, it was very unlikely to kill you. Number 7. The Judas cradle. Without doubt, the Judas cradle was designed to both torture and disgrace. The torturer would insert the sharp tip of the pyramid of the Judas cradle into your posterior, with the guts, blood, and feces of the last person still smothered all over it. You then would have been slowly lowered down the pyramid to cause as much pain as possible until your posterior was slowly torn open. However, it does not end there. You would then be lowered even further down the Judas cradle until the tip of the pyramid pierced your organs and you were impaled. We place the Judas cradle at number 7 because it was used to tear open your posterior, pierce the organs, and ultimately impale you. Imagine how painful that would have been. Number 6. The rack. The rack was a very popular device that was generally used to obtain information from the victim. The torturer would tie the victim's ankles to the roller at the end of the device, and their wrists were tied to the roller at the top of the device. Then, the torturer would turn the wheel on the side, which would slowly increase the tension on your joints to such a point that your tendons and ligaments would pop and snap. There are documents that exist that demonstrate that, in some cases, the torturer continued turning the wheel until the person's limbs were ripped from their body. We placed the rack at number 6 because not only could you dislocate the joints with the rack, but it also allows the torturer to tear your limbs off. Number 5. The Iron Maiden. Spikes. Spikes everywhere. Imagine all those spikes penetrating every inch of your body, your head, neck, eyes and feet, anywhere you care to think of. But upon closer inspection, when looking at these spikes, you will notice that they are not long enough to cause any serious harm. So why is the Iron Maiden number 5, we hear you cry? Well, because the spikes of the Iron Maiden do not result in life-threatening injuries and allowed the torturer to have their fun over and over again. And that is what the Iron Maiden was built for, The torturer would force you inside the Iron Maiden and then slam the door, causing those spikes to pierce every aspect of your body. Just think of the intense pain you would feel. However, whilst an Iron Maiden was found in a castle in Germany, many academics and historians believe that the Iron Maiden did not exist during the medieval period, because reference to one being used was not made until the early 18th century. Nonetheless, we choose the number 5 spot for the Iron Maiden, whether or not it existed during the medieval period, because it could cause intense pain over and over again with its simple yet scary design. Number 4. The Spanish horse. The Spanish horse was used for the purpose of humiliation. However, like many torture devices, it could cripple and, in some instances, slice you open. The torturer would force you to sit on this effective but simple torture device. Once you were sat on the Spanish horse, the torturer would add weights to both your legs to stop you from falling, as well as to increase pressure on your groin. As you can imagine, you would at this point probably be screaming in agony. But never fear, because the torturer would be standing by, ready to add even more weights to both your legs. Adding more weights would eventually cause the sharp edge of the Spanish horse to slowly cut into your groin. In fact, there are documents that recorded cases where the Spanish horse actually sliced right through people when one too many weights were added by the torturer. The Spanish horse reaches number 4 on this list, as it gives the torturer the ability to cripple the victim or slowly slice them open. Number 3, the head crusher. This horrendous torture device had the capacity to end your life both quickly and painlessly, but most sessions of torture lasted for hours, and this kind of lets you know the mentality of the torturers who were eager to use it. The head crusher was used throughout Europe during the Middle Ages to effectively extract information, and it also gave the torturer total control of the torture session. The torturer would place your chin above the bottom bar, and the upper head cap was lowered by turning the wheel on top of the head crusher, eventually causing the top piece of the head crusher to be lowered. Turning the screw slowly would increase the pressure on your skull with every turn. In the first few turns, your top teeth would be forced into your lower jaw, and your bottom teeth would be forced into your top jaw. Further turning of the wheel could result in both of your eyes popping out of their socket, whilst the fluid from your brain would be oozing out of your eye sockets, down your nose, and out of your ears. With further twisting, your skull would be severely crushed, and whatever remains may be left inside of your head would at this point spill out. The head crusher is number 3 on this list, as the torturer had the choice on how long the torture session lasted and whether you lived or died. Number 2. The saw. The saw was a very simple but effective torture implement that would have been used to saw you in half. Initially, the way all torturers would have used the saw would have been to start sawing you from the head downwards very slowly. Yet this was not good enough for the torturers, because, as you no doubt have guessed, sawing through your head first is going to kill you pretty quickly. So instead, an unknown torturer began a new trend, which would have seen you hung upside down. Then the torturer would start sawing you in half from the bottom down towards your head, ensuring you stayed alive long enough to see your organs fall out of your body. We give the saw the number 2 spot, as it gave the torturer control of the torture, would have been horrific, and also because it was simple to use. First on the list, we arrive at the spine-chilling breaking wheel. Imagine the first instance you laid your unsuspecting eyes on the devious Wheel of Catherine, or as some would refer to it, St. Catherine's Wheel. With its ominous debut onto the public raised stage, an icy wave of trepidation would seize your heart in an unshakable grip. The horrifying realization would dawn upon you. The imminent spectacle was not a mere punitive demonstration, but a ghastly ceremony of death. This was no ordinary wheel. Far from the benign image of a wheel you might stumble upon, attached to the wooden wagons journeying down dusty paths laden with goods. This was a harbinger of mortality, a stark and chilling contrast to any commonplace wheel. It could be armed with menacing cogs and razor-sharp teeth, or adorned with a rectangular iron thrust with a blade protruding ominously from the rim. It was a sight potent enough to instigate a bone-rattling fear in even the most hardened hearts. In the deathly shadows of the Middle Ages, the torturer, a nightmare personified, could exercise 2 blood-curdling methods to wield this monstrous appliance. He might have positioned you meticulously on the wheel, aligning your arms and legs in the deadly embrace of the threatening cogs and teeth, binding your limbs securely to the wheel. Or he could have tethered you to the public stage, a platform stained by countless heart-rending stories of agony. Once you were shackled, either to the wheel or the public stage, the next act in this macabre performance would unfold. The torturer would lift a hammer or the wheel, employing it not merely to fracture all the bones in your arms and legs, but to utterly pulverize and fragment the bones in these limbs. The sadistic objective to ensure that every fiber of your body that bore the brunt of the blow would be shattered into pieces, as if the symphony of your pain should resonate in every nook and cranny of your body, prolonging the torment. In the throes of such prolonged periods of excruciating torture, you might have been deceived into anticipating the cold kiss of death. Unless the torturer had been ordered to garrote, decapitate, or set the wheel ablaze with you still trust to it, death would have been a tantalizing mirage. Instead, the torturer would lace your mangled limbs through the wheel, hoisting it high for all to witness. This ghastly spectacle ensured that the onlookers could gawk at your broken and blood-soaked body, a display designed to exact maximum public disgrace. But the wave of cruelty was yet to recede. If you harbored the faint hope that your life was nearing its end, you were tragically mistaken. Historical records penned between the 14th and 16th century recount victims who clung to consciousness up to 9 excruciating days, still chained to the wheel. This was a testament not only to human endurance, but to the bone-chilling horror that was the breaking wheel. Intriguingly, the wheel could also find use in another grotesque fashion. The torturer would first bind you to the wheel's exterior, then tether your feet to an immovable object embedded in the ground. Then, as the wheel commenced its relentless rotation, your helpless body would be shattered. Amid the torturous nightmare, there would be an iota of mercy. This method often ushered in swift death. We awarded this horrific contraption the #1 spot, not solely because it was a vessel for immeasurable pain and humiliation, but also due to its fatal nature. The breaking wheel is a haunting emblem of humanity's darkest chapters. We invite you to share your thoughts on the 10 most terrifying torture devices in the comments section below, and your chosen device could star in our next chilling video. If our content engages you, please subscribe, click like, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay safe, and we will see you in the next one.